Welcome to the Third Wing channel. Today we're going to be doing a tier list of all the episodes in season 1 of iCarly, and my tiers are as follows. My personal favorites, my own opinion, my personal favorites at the top, and then we got iconic, which I think are episodes which have just kind of stood out, and you know, throughout through time people still remember them. Then we got the great episodes, which are just super solid. Then we got the pretty good episodes, which like you'll watch, but maybe they're not the best ones. And then we have the could pass episodes, which, sometimes you just skip because they're just maybe not so exciting or the content's just not great. But let's get into it. First, we got the pilot, and I have to put this in iconic. Although I will say, I think the show could have had a better pilot, but they set up the whole iCarly web show pretty perfectly with the. I always laugh at the part where they make fun of Mrs. Briggs, pointy breasts, but and that's kind of what made people laugh and why iCarly even started. And it's all right. And I like the picture of Miss Briggs on the rhino. The head, she's the head of the rhino. It's very funny, but it's obviously iconic. It's the pilot. Moving on, we have I Want More Views. This is a personal favorite of mine. I love the creativity, how we have two different teams, and they have to come up with the best way to get more people to watch iCarly. And I couldn't pick a winner. How I could. I'd say Freddie and Spencer with the billboard were did awesome, and I love how it ended up being Pete on Carl, and then the police officer that comes and kind of not arrests, but gives them Freddie and Spencer warning is called Carl. It's just so funny, and I love this episode. I come back to it a lot. Moving on, we have I Dream of Dance. It's a weird episode. By the way, all these are in order from first number 1 to 25 in terms of airing. So this is the third episode that aired, and I thought this is the kind of episode you put last, kind of dream world episode. But I will say it's kind of interesting with what every character envisions as as they fall asleep, what they envision as their kind of dance. Freddie envisions himself being cool. Sam goes into this weird Scottish world. It was kind of like torture, I think, for her. And then Carly gets like, the cute boy thing. And then obviously we get Spencer in the end with the same dress on as Carly, which is really funny. But overall, this is the episode where they get sent in a bunch of dances, like 3,000 of them. They have to sit through and watch through all of them. But I think it's pretty good. I could pass on this episode maybe. Yeah, I think it's creative, like in the dream thing, but I could probably pass on this episode if I'm being completely honest. Next, we got I Like Jake. This is where he sings terribly, but he says, I sing, so maybe I could sing on your show, and blah blah blah. And they both like Jake, but he's a terrible singer, and they do everything they can to avoid him being on the show. But in the end, they fail, and Freddie fixes his voice with auto tune. I think it's pretty good. I don't think it's like the best episode ever, but it's all right. Moving on, we have I Want to Stay with Spencer, and I just this one is maybe my favorite episode in season 1. I love how Spencer proves that he can take care of Carly. I love how intense it feels. It's almost like in season 1 already we get like a sneak peek of what we will have at the very end of the show, like how Carly will leave. And I think it's just a very realistic scenario where Spencer, is he really mature enough? Like they answer that question right away as to why Spencer is the guardian of Carly. And I really like this episode. I think it's super fun, and I understand why Carly doesn't want to go to Yakima. Then we got I Neville, which is an iconic episode. This is where we get introduced to, I'd say, iCarly's main villain. I love how he shows a picture of his brain, and he's a super weird kid, and then he expects a kiss, and he doesn't get it. But he's actually a fan of iCarly, but then he slanders it, and the way they fix it is they just say, tell his mom to tell Neville to write an honest review, and obviously he listens to his mom. I think it's iconic. It's where we get introduced to Neville, and you will rue the day. Moving on, we have the first Halloween episode. Maybe I don't even remember if there was really another truly Halloween episode, but this episode, I thought it was a little cheesy, but I do love the stuff with Spencer and the big pumpkin. I think I'd put it in great. It entertained me, but the whole thing, the haunted apartment thing, I love that they didn't go for supernatural, but the fact that the the old lady lived there and stuff like that. I mean, it's all right, but it's let's just say it's solid. It's entertaining. Then we get to another one of my favorites, I Spy on Mean Teacher, I think it's called. Yeah, where we find out how crazy teachers' lives are, or no, Miss Briggs' life is outside of school, and I think it's a really insightful episode to, like, to treat teachers as people. We get actually another episode about teachers in this season, and I think I just find it super funny how she's a super fan of Randy Jackson. She has um, this yoga ball workout thing. I think it's super funny, and I come back to this episode a lot. Moving on, we have I Will Date Freddy. This is definitely a good pass for me. This one is one that I've like almost forgot. I do like how Spencer's the waiter, and he only serves pudding. That was funny, but otherwise, it's just brings up some like weird, like, oh, the girl's taller, or some. It was something like that. I just think it's kind of lame. I think it was also where she wanted to make her own webcast. I don't like this episode too much. Moving on is I Want a World Record. This was a really exciting episode the first time I watched it, and once you know what happens, it's a little less exciting. I do like how they consolidate the episode with Spencer winning an award. I think that's really clever, and otherwise, like that's a very trendy episode. Like, it was ahead of its time. Like, people do like 24-hour streams all the time now, but this is it was quite ahead of its time. Maybe I should put it in iconic. Yeah, sure. They wanted to break world record. They almost did it, but Spencer got it instead. It's awesome. Then we have I Will You. What is it called? Uh, I Rue the Day. That's what it's called. Where Neville finally gets his revenge, kind of, and then with the help of Carly's dad, they literally send in the army or the military to take care of his laboratory of computers. This is also the episode with Plain White Tees, and you know, I think it's iconic. I thought that Plain White Tees were amazing when I was a kid. I just loved it, and it was really fun with Neville. Where would I put it? Yeah, I'd put it around here. Next we got I Promise Not to Tell, where Sam changes the grades of Sam and Freddie and Carly's grades because Carly got her first like B plus or something. And she changes everyone's grades to be perfect, or like maybe I don't know, better. And then Carly and Freddie feel way too much like they're too honest. They just their life becomes super paranoid, and they can't live with it. So they basically Freddie hacks into the school system to change the grades back to being worse, and then the what was it, the CSA, see, what are they called, the FBI, I don't know, but they basically get caught. And yeah, it's crazy, but in the end, Sam does convince Principal Franklin to say like, okay, this is all me. And then the moment Principal Franklin leaves the room in her new detentions, she goes on the computer and changes her detentions to less. That being said, I think this episode is pretty good, but I think it's makes um Carly's character a little inconsistent later on in the series, where she starts getting worse grades. I don't know, it's kind of weird. Then we have um, I Am Your Biggest Fan. I think this episode is another good pass for me. I think she's a little too weird, although I like the concept of like a stan, a really big fan that is super obsessive. I think it's good to bring up, and obviously a show like iCarly will have that, but I don't know, it's a little too much for me. Then we have I Heart Art, which is the episode where Spencer's favorite art critic or artist comes and judges his art, and at first he completely uh he says it's horrible basically, and Spencer goes into a deep depression, and then eventually with a lot of effort the artist comes around and says, okay, I was just jealous, I think it's amazing, and everything's back to normal. And I think that this episode, like, it teaches you to, yes, respect your idols, but maybe not to meet them, and just still to treat them as people. I don't know. I think it's okay. I would put it at the very bottom of pretty good. I think I could pass on this episode. I don't think it really stands out to me as a great episode. Then we have I Hate Sam's Boyfriend, I think it's called. This kid is super annoying. He tries to kiss Carly, and obviously that gives him a new wedgie device that they torture him with on the show. I think I could pass on this one as well. It's just not super good, and I don't know. It, I don't need a full episode of just this. Next we got I Hatch Chicks, which is one of my favorites. Honestly, I think this episode is super exciting with the way that all the chicks escape and they have to go through the house. It's a great way to get us to like kind of appreciate the house more. One's in the wall, one's in the ventilation, one's in like on this like beams in the ceiling. So it was really exciting, to be honest. And one was in Spencer's shower. I really like this episode for some reason. I like all the names and it's nice. Next we got I Don't Want to Fight, where Freddy basically has to break up this huge fight between Carly and Sam over a T-shirt that Carly gives Sam, and then Sam sells it for concert tickets, and Carly gets mad, and yeah, basically a dumb argument. And Freddy puts up a poll saying who was right, and then he puts a third option, which is says you guys are both being dumb and you should stop fighting, and that wins. And I also like how in the episode, Freddy has a mechanism to control their arguing, which is basically attaching a rope to both their ponytails and then pulling when someone has to stop talking. I think that was really funny. But I think this is a great episode. Moving on, we have the Techfoot episode, and I was debating between putting this in favorites or iconic, and like I think it's just a little worse than my favorites, but I do think it's iconic. I'll put it behind the Neville episodes though. I do like how they like kind of expose the corporate world for being cheap, and like this whole advertising thing is more relevant now than ever. How often do you go on YouTube and see, oh, Raid Shadow Legends or whatever, right? So many different ones when they probably don't use those products at all. It's just I like the insight of the episode, and I think it's really great. And I think it's become iconic. Next, we got I Detention, which um I think I'm gonna put in my favorites instead of iconic. I don't think it's a super popular episode, but I love how Sam gets attention, and they're about to do their 50th episode, which they hype up so much. And in the end, yeah, Sam gets attention, so Freddy and Carly also get detention, which is entertaining to see how these good guys will get detention, and then they're all in detention. Show's going well. It's a funny show. Mr. Howard catches them, and in the end, Principal Franklin comes in and says, "Lay off." And then he says hi to his daughters on iCarly. I think it was really great. I think it's one of my favorite episodes. It reminds me a little bit of some other show where there's a tension. Can't really remember, but it was a really good episode. Next, we got Ice Stakeout, which I'm gonna put as pretty good. I think I think it's a little stale. Like, and the solution is like wearing a hat and going to find the guy, and these I don't know. It's just not a super exciting episode to me. The most exciting part is I love how spent this like old not buddy of Spencer's but old enemy of Spencer's who like spanked him in at a summer camp or something, and he meets him again. I think that's pretty funny, but it's just not a very exciting episode. It doesn't make much sense to me. Um, I what is this one called? I Might Switch Schools. We get again another time where Carly is almost like threatened to leave the gang, but the gang ends up sabotaging Carly, which shows like what their true intentions are. Freddy and Sam basically sabotage Carly getting into school. Even on iCarly.com, they even put like a rejection letter after that. And it's an entertaining episode. I think it's pretty good, but it's not one of my favorites at all. Um, but it does show a lot about each of their characters, and I like the mini golf course where they invite Gibby and all the little kids, and then they'd say the interviewer that comes to Carly's house, they say the magic golf ball that is worth a lot is in her pocket. I think it was really funny, but yeah, pretty good. Uh, the Fence and Bensons, I think the episode's called I Fence. This is one of my favorites. I'd put it about there. I love when Miss Benson comes with the Fence and Benson story. It's so funny. It's like a circus of Fence and Bensons. And then at the end, Miss Benson shows her fencing skills when Freddy is losing in the tournament. I think it's hilarious. I really like the theme, and it's a really creative sport to bring in. Next, we got iCarly Saves TV. Um, I think this episode's iconic just because of Zebo, and I think Andre from Victorious is in this episode, and just a bunch of like, I don't know, like also the idea of making iCarly a TV show and it doesn't work is that out because they don't like the corporate factor, and then the like kind of joking about the sitcoms being boring. I think it's iconic, and Zebo it's funny. Moving on, we have I Win a Date, where basically I think Gibby has a huge crush on a girl, and they set up like a rigged show where there's three girls and Gibby interviews all of them and he chooses the one he likes the most blindly, and he accidentally chooses Carly, and it's a bit of a mess. It's I think there's a lot of interesting things with the characters there, like how they approach the romantic issues and whatnot, but I think it's pretty good. I'll put it at the bottom of pretty good. I don't remember this episode that well, to be honest. And then lastly, we have I Have a Lovesick Teacher, where their teacher gets dumped. In turn, they have horrible assignments and tests, and teacher's not happy. Then Spencer comes in and confronts her about it, and then they start dating. And then Spencer realizes she's horrible, and Spencer dumps her. And then, I mean, while they're dating, obviously the kids are getting like no homework, and then he dumps her, and then it gets double as bad, especially for Carly. And in the end, the teacher had given Spencer this pair phone with illegally downloaded songs. So the way they take care of her is literally get her arrested. And then the kids have fun and they have a day off basically. But I don't know. I don't know if this episode teaches much. I think it's just pretty good. I'd put it around here. It's all right. For season finale, not so much. But this is my list of season 1 episodes. Let me know in the comments if you disagree. What is your favorite episode? What is your least favorite episode? Do you want to see me do season 2? And lastly, I want to mention that we do a lot of Nickelodeon content, a lot of iCarly content. We're going to be doing new iCarly content for the new series coming out later this month. And yeah, that's all I got. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.